Imagine a child disappears near the edge of a village. People search the fields and the woods. They find blood, torn clothing, and tracks that look like a wolf cross the mud. Then somebody remembers a man who leaves home at strange hours. He's been seen returning barefoot. He keeps a belt or a hide hidden where nobody else is supposed to look. A witness says the wolf had human eyes. Nobody is waiting for the next full moon. At this point, the full moon rule hasn't taken over. The older werewolf could change at night, during a particular season, after putting on a skin, after using an ointment, or whenever a curse allowed it. Some accused werewolves were said to leave their human bodies asleep while their spirits fought in animal form. Others claimed that nothing physically changed at all. The person only believed they were a wolf, behaved like one, or used a story to explain real violence. Even the word covers more than one kind of fear. It can mean a person transformed into a wolf, a person whose spirit travels as a wolf, a witch using an animal shape, somebody cursed against their will, or a murderer described through the language of shape-shifting. The survival problem changes with each version. Modern werewolves usually arrive with a clean rule set. The condition passes through a bite, the moon forces the change, silver can kill the creature, and the human wakes afterward with missing time and blood on their clothes. Historical traditions are much less cooperative. The wolf may be a criminal, disguise, spirit, weapon, or accusation. Silver may not matter. A bite may injure you without transforming you. Killing the animal could expose a human body, injure the person connected to it, or leave you with an ordinary dead wolf and no proof that you found the right suspect. This video stays with documented European werewolf beliefs, trials, and the later folklore that fed Hollywood. Human-animal transformation appears in many cultures, but treating all of it as one monster erases the differences and invents a consistency the sources don't have. Before film gave the werewolf a full moon and a silver bullet, people disagreed about what the creature was, how to identify it, and what might improve your odds if the stories were true. The first problem is that the werewolf may not be a stranger in the forest. It may be the person helping you search. A real wolf can kill without explaining itself. It doesn't need a secret life, a pact, or a motive that belongs to a human being. A werewolf story begins when an animal attack is pulled back into the social world. The tracks lead toward a house. The wounds on the wolf appear on a neighbor. A missing person returns when the animal disappears. The creature understands doors, schedules, and grudges because the creature is also somebody people know. That human connection changes every useful warning sign. You can't protect yourself only by avoiding wilderness. A voluntary werewolf may choose when to leave home and where to hunt. A cursed person may try to isolate themselves, though they may not understand the conditions soon enough. A witch in wolf form may use the animal body to reach a target without being recognized. An accused murderer may behave normally between attacks because no transformation happened at all. The fear often gathered around people who already seemed difficult to place. A solitary shepherd could spend long periods beyond observation, while a beggar or outsider might disappear without anyone knowing where they went. Someone with a violent reputation gave the village a ready suspect after attacks on livestock or children. Open claims of shapeshifting could supply the accusation without any outside witness. None of those details proves lycanthropy. They explain why the story attached to some people more easily than others. The same danger appears in witch trials. Once an authority accepts that hidden supernatural crimes are possible, ordinary evidence changes value. A confession may be treated as confirmation, even when it follows torture. A mark on the body may become the place where an animal's skin was fastened. Knowledge of the local woods can look like knowledge of secret hunting routes. An unusual absence becomes the missing hour when the wolf was outside. Inside the folklore, familiarity gives you a tactical advantage. You know who's missing when the attacks happen. You can compare the wolf's injuries with injuries on people nearby. You can watch for hidden skins, belts, salves, or clothing connected with transformation. Outside the folklore, those same methods can become a machine for accusing somebody unpopular. That distinction has to remain visible throughout this video. Historical records may describe real murders, confessions produced in courts that accepted witchcraft as fact, or folk beliefs that don't prove anyone transformed. A trial record can tell us what judges, witnesses, or defendants said. It can't make the supernatural claim true. A useful survival plan starts by separating the immediate animal threat from the explanation. If a large predator is attacking, secure people and livestock, travel in groups, use light, noise, barriers, and trained help. Record tracks and wounds before rumor changes the scene. Don't follow an injured animal alone into cover. Then watch the human pattern without turning suspicion into a verdict. Track who knew where the victim would be, who had access to the animals, who returned injured, and who benefits from the story. A living attacker can use fear of a werewolf to hide ordinary violence. The person yelling loudest about a monster may be directing attention away from themselves. The older werewolf is dangerous, partly because it gives human intent to an animal body. The full moon is one of the strongest modern werewolf rules, and one of the least reliable historical ones. Older accounts connect transformation with several triggers. A person might put on a wolf skin or fasten a belt made from hide. Other accounts use an ointment, water from a wolf's footprint, a ritual crossing, a curse, a pact, or a particular night or season. Some stories do use the moon, though the rigid monthly schedule is largely a product of later literature and film. Earlier material doesn't give us one calendar that lets a village mark every dangerous night in advance. A full moon transformation can be placed on a calendar, giving people time to prepare a secure room and move anyone vulnerable. A belt or skin lets the person choose the moment. A curse lasting several years may return under conditions nobody else understands, while a traveling spirit makes the sleeping human body a poor form of containment. The transformation object appears again and again because it makes the impossible action physical. A skin changes the outline. A belt circles the body and closes a new identity around it. An ointment supplies a substance that can be blamed for the change. Removing or destroying the object may force the person back into human form, or prevent another transformation. That gives you one of the strongest old survival rules. Search for the method before trying to kill the creature. If the werewolf depends on clothing or an object, the object may be easier to control than the transformed body. Take the skin while the person is human, lock it away. Destroy it only if the tradition says destruction won't trap the person permanently in animal form. That last warning is important because folklore doesn't always reward improvisation. Burning an enchanted skin might cure the person in one story and doom them in another. A spell can depend on exact handling, exact words, or a set number of years. The same action changes meaning across regions. An ointment creates a different problem. Early modern writers often described witches using salves before imagined flight or transformation. Historians have debated whether some mixtures contain psychoactive plants, whether the descriptions came from demonological theory, or whether the salves existed mainly in confessions and literary repetition. There is no single recovered recipe that explains werewolf belief. A person experiencing delirium, intoxication, psychosis, or a vivid dream could sincerely report becoming an animal. That isn't the same as a body physically changing. It still creates risk if the person acts on the belief, or if authorities treat the claim as proof of murder. Clinical lycanthropy is the modern term used for a rare psychiatric syndrome in which a person believes they're transforming into an animal, or behaves as though they have. It's been reported with severe psychosis and other conditions. The term doesn't mean that historical werewolf cases can all be diagnosed from a distance. It shows that the experience of transformation can feel real to the person without a supernatural event. That distinction changes how you survive an encounter. A physically transformed predator requires distance and barriers. A human being in a psychiatric crisis requires emergency care, de-escalation, and protection for everyone nearby. Treating the second person like an invulnerable monster can make the situation far more dangerous. The stories rarely make that choice easy. Witnesses may describe animal movement, altered voice, crawling, biting, or eating raw flesh. A person can imitate several of those behaviors without changing species. The safest first response isn't to stand close enough to settle the argument. Create distance first. Move children and anyone vulnerable out of reach. Avoid crowding the person, and call trained help. If an actual animal is present, don't assume it'll follow a human rule because somebody told a transformation story. The moon became useful to cinema because it puts all of this uncertainty on a clock. Before that clock existed, people looked for signs on the body. A calendar is useful only after the trigger has been identified. The modern full moon rule lets a family count days, reinforce a room, and move other people out before the change begins. Older accounts often offer timing without that level of precision. A dangerous night may belong to a feast day, a season, a curse, or a private ritual known only to the person involved. Some stories describe repeated transformation without explaining why one night differs from another. That uncertainty changes the value of observation. Record the date, weather, moon phase, location, witnesses, and events that happen before every attack. Include nights when nothing happened. A pattern built only from successful guesses will make almost any calendar look convincing. Several attacks under a bright moon may reflect visibility, travel, livestock routines, or later memory rather than a supernatural trigger. Inside the folklore, timing can still reveal the mechanism. A person who disappears after retrieving a hidden belt presents a different pattern from someone who becomes distressed at the same point every month. A curse tied to a fixed term may end without violence, while a voluntary transformation may stop when the object is removed. The safe response depends on which pattern survives complete records. Planning should work even when the calendar is wrong. Secure vulnerable people before the suspected period, but keep the barriers useful on ordinary nights. Arrange remote monitoring instead of placing one watcher within reach. Tell emergency responders about observable danger rather than asking them to accept a transformation theory. If the expected night passes quietly, preserve that result instead of moving the prediction until the rule appears correct. Historical stories became cleaner as they were retold. A vague connection with night can become a rule about moonlight. A seasonal danger can become a monthly schedule. One dramatic attack can be placed beneath a full moon because the image feels complete. Survival depends on resisting that cleanup. Treat the date as evidence, not destiny. The werewolf becomes easier to face when the group knows which parts of the schedule were observed and which parts were inherited from later fiction. The werewolf needed to pass between two identities. Folklore tried to catch the seam. One common idea says the human body keeps a sign of the animal. Some accounts point to joined eyebrows, unusually thick hair, or hair on the palms. Others describe strange movement, social withdrawal, or a violent appetite. Those signs are useless as evidence. They turn normal human variation into suspicion. Other tests focus on injuries. A hunter cuts the paw from a wolf, and later finds a human hand in the bag. A wolf is wounded in the leg, then a neighbor appears with the same wound. The animal is struck across the face, and the suspected person carries the mark the next morning. This pattern appears in many shapeshifter stories because it gives the witness something physical. The animal and the person share one body, so damage crosses the transformation. If the rule is true, a non-fatal wound can identify the suspect. That sounds more restrained than killing the animal, though it remains dangerous. Wounding a real wolf creates an injured predator. Wounding a person based on resemblance is assault. A matching injury can result from coincidence, rumor, or a witness changing the story after seeing the suspect. Quiet observation tells you more. Don't announce the exact wound publicly. Record it. Watch who seeks treatment, compare timing and location, and preserve the animal evidence. A secret detail is more useful than a detail everybody can copy. Some stories say the wolf form lacks a tail or has human eyes. Others describe a wolf that behaves too deliberately, enters a house, opens a latch, or attacks one selected person while ignoring easier prey. Real animals can also behave in surprising ways. Habituation, hunger, disease, injury, and access to human food change behavior. Rabies can reduce fear, increase aggression, cause abnormal vocalization, and lead to biting. Rabies doesn't produce a werewolf, and not every aggressive animal has rabies. It gives a real reason to treat any bite or saliva exposure as urgent. That's one place where folklore survival and real survival agree. Don't wait for symptoms after a suspicious mammal bite. Modern post-exposure treatment works when it begins promptly. Once clinical rabies symptoms appear, the disease is usually fatal. This isn't the part of the story where you monitor yourself until the next moon. The older bite rule is less consistent. Being bitten by a werewolf doesn't automatically transform you in every tradition. The wound may simply kill, infect, or mark you. Some stories make lycanthropy hereditary or imposed by magic, rather than transmitted through injury. Hollywood turned the bite into a clean method of reproduction because it lets the monster spread and gives the victim a countdown. Historical belief often puts more weight on the accused person's life, curse, or magical practice. Courts also treated confession as identification. Here, the evidence becomes especially dangerous. Early modern courts could use leading questions, coercion, torture, and demonological expectations. A confession may contain elaborate details about belts, ointments, pacts, cannibalism, and meetings with the devil. Those details tell us what the legal culture was prepared to hear. They don't prove the accused person supplied them freely or accurately. Defendants may have confessed to real killings in supernatural language, repeated fantasies, or spoken from severe mental illness. Others were forced into narratives they couldn't survive. The werewolf trial of Peter Stumpp is the most famous example of how violence, propaganda, and supernatural accusation can become impossible to separate cleanly. In 1590, a pamphlet published in London described the execution of a man usually called Peter Stumpp, Peter Stubb, or Peter Stube. The events were placed near Bedburg, in the territory of the Archbishopric of Cologne. The pamphlet accused him of murders, cannibalism, incest, and witchcraft. It said the devil gave him a belt that allowed him to become a wolf. In that form, he supposedly attacked livestock, women, and children over many years. According to the account, hunters pursued a wolf, and then found Stumpp nearby in human form. He was arrested, tortured, confessed, and received an execution designed to destroy his body publicly. His flesh was torn with heated pincers, his limbs were broken, he was beheaded and burned. His daughter and another woman were also executed. A wheel with a carved wolf was raised as a warning. The story is often retold as though it were a police file with a supernatural suspect. The pamphlet isn't that kind of record. The surviving English pamphlet is sensational, moralizing, and politically useful. It presents an enemy who's sexually transgressive, murderous, cannibalistic, and allied with the devil. The region was caught in religious and political conflict. The punishment staged authority as much as it punished a man. We don't have a complete neutral record that lets us verify every accusation. Torture makes the confession unreliable. The pamphlet may preserve real crimes, exaggerated crimes, invented crimes, or a combination. Inside the story, the belt is the key weakness. Stumpp supposedly threw it away when hunters approached. Once he lost the transformation object, he appeared human and could be captured. That's a far better survival clue than anything about moonlight or silver. The object matters more than the moon. If a suspected werewolf leaves clothing, a belt, or a skin near the transformation site, don't handle it carelessly. Mark the location and use witnesses. Keep it away from anyone who might put it on. If the object is evidence of an ordinary crime, preserving it matters. If it's genuinely magical, casual contact may be the worst possible test. The hunters also used numbers. They pursued the animal as a group. A lone witness can be attacked, mistaken, or dismissed. A coordinated search can block routes and compare what each person saw. The trouble is that a group can become a mob just as easily as it can become a search party. Once the wolf disappeared and Stumpp was found, the human suspect replaced the animal in the story. The court didn't need to demonstrate a physical transformation in front of neutral observers. Confession supplied the missing mechanism. That should make any survival investigator cautious. The moment a suspect is selected, every unexplained detail can be pushed into the supernatural gap. The missing belt proves it vanished by magic. The absent wolf proves it became human. A confession proves the theory after the accused has been tortured. A system like that can't clear anybody. You should preserve alternatives. Keep open the possibility of a real wolf, a human killer, several unrelated attacks, false testimony, and a person in crisis. Don't let the werewolf explanation erase ordinary evidence. The French cases show the same danger, though several accused people describe transformation in very different ways. The Peter Stumpp story survived because it could travel. A local execution became a printed account that readers elsewhere could buy, repeat, and use as a warning. The pamphlet supplied violence, sexual transgression, cannibalism, witchcraft, a pact with the devil, and a transformation object. Each part strengthened the others until the accused man appeared to explain every fear at once. That form matters when judging the evidence. A pamphlet was written to be read, sold, and remembered. It could preserve names, dates, accusations, and punishment while arranging them for moral impact. The surviving text doesn't provide the neutral distance of a modern case file. It gives readers a finished monster whose guilt makes the punishment seem necessary. Even the name reaches us in several forms. Peter Stumpp, Peter Stubb, and Peter Stube refer to the same accused man in later discussion, but hearing them together can sound like three people. That confusion is useful to avoid in narration and useful to notice in historical research. Variant spellings can multiply one case across indexes, summaries, and retellings. A researcher may believe several sources agree when they repeat one printed account under different spellings. The survival lesson is source control. Record which detail comes from the pamphlet, which appears in a later retelling, and which has been added by modern folklore. Keep the reported belt separate from the fact of arrest. Keep confession separate from torture. Keep the execution date separate from the publication date. A dramatic detail shouldn't become stronger simply because it has been repeated for centuries. The same discipline protects a frightened community. One witness sees a wolf, another remembers a missing neighbor, and a third supplies a story about a hidden skin. By the next morning, the details may have become one continuous event, even when nobody observed the full sequence. Write each statement before the witnesses compare accounts. Preserve contradictions. A gap in the story is safer than a false bridge that points toward one suspect. The pamphlet gives the werewolf an unforgettable shape. It doesn't give us permission to treat every part of that shape as proven. The useful fact is that print can stabilize uncertainty until it feels like memory. A modern rumor can do the same thing faster. Once one version dominates, evidence that doesn't fit may disappear from the retelling long before it disappears from the scene. Gilles Garnier was executed in 1574 in Dole, in the region of Franche-Comté. He was accused of killing children and eating their flesh. Accounts describe him as a solitary man who lived outside town and received a means of transformation from a supernatural figure. The legal story turns isolation into motive and opportunity. Garnier lived near the places where children disappeared. His social distance made him easier to imagine as something outside ordinary humanity. Whether he committed the killings is a historical question that surviving summaries don't settle with the certainty modern retellings often claim. The werewolf accusation gave the court a complete explanation before forensic methods could test one. A few decades later, Jean Grenier presented a different problem. Grenier was a young person in early 17th century France who claimed to become a wolf and described attacks on children. Pierre de Lancre recorded the case. The original trial record is lost, so later readers depend heavily on de Lancre's account and later retellings. Grenier wasn't executed. He was confined to a monastery for life. Reports from later observation described him behaving in ways that continued to suggest severe disturbance and an identification with wolves. That outcome matters because authorities didn't treat every werewolf accusation in exactly the same way. Age, mental state, legal judgment, and the credibility of the confession could change the sentence. It also gives us a clearer warning about self-accusation. A person may tell an elaborate monster story about themselves. They may boast, threaten, fantasize, confess, or sincerely believe it. The statement requires investigation. It isn't a reason to accept every supernatural detail at face value. If somebody says they're a wolf and have hurt people, secure potential victims and look for evidence of harm. Don't encourage the performance or challenge them to transform. Don't hand them a weapon or an animal skin as a test. Keep the human emergency in view. Modern audiences sometimes want one medical explanation for all werewolf cases. Rabies, ergot poisoning, hypertrichosis, serial murder, and clinical lycanthropy are each offered as the answer. No single diagnosis explains every case. Rabies can explain some frightening animal behavior and some symptoms after a bite. Hypertrichosis can produce unusual hair growth, though it doesn't explain transformation stories. Psychosis can include animal identity delusions. Real murder can be narrated through local supernatural beliefs. Coercive courts can manufacture confessions. Different cases may involve different combinations. Treating one diagnosis as the secret origin of every werewolf is another form of false rulebook. The strangest case may be the one where the accused werewolf insisted he was protecting the community. In 1691, an elderly man named Thiess was questioned in Jürgensburg, in Swedish Livonia, now part of Latvia. He was known locally as a werewolf. Thiess didn't confess to serving the devil in the way interrogators expected. He said werewolves were the hounds of God. According to the surviving record, he claimed that several times a year their spirits traveled to hell, fought witches and demons, and recovered grain, livestock, and fertility stolen from the community. Without the werewolves, he said, harvests would fail. Thiess gives the werewolf the opposite moral role. The werewolf is still a person who travels in animal form. The transformation is still tied to hidden supernatural conflict. The moral direction changes completely. Thiess places himself among protectors rather than predators. The judges pressed him on doctrine. His story didn't fit the Christian categories they wanted. A werewolf was supposed to be demonic. Thiess insisted on his own explanation and was punished for practices including folk healing and heterodox belief, rather than executed as a cannibalistic wolf. For survival, the case destroys another modern assumption. An animal shape doesn't tell you whose side someone is on. A creature that looks like a wolf may be attacking people, protecting fields, fighting another supernatural threat, or doing something the witness can't see. If you attack based only on shape, you may kill the one being that understands the danger. That doesn't mean trusting every self-described protector. Thiess's account is one testimony shaped by interrogation, memory, performance, and local belief. It means the moral rule isn't universal. Behavior tells you more than appearance. Record whether the creature approaches homes or moves away from them. Distinguish attacks on livestock from guarding or pursuit. Compare injuries among vulnerable victims with injuries on people accused of harmful magic. Check whether the supposed protector provides information that can be verified. The old story also introduces spirit travel. Thiess didn't need his human body to become a physically observed wolf in front of the court. His soul or spirit could leave and fight elsewhere. That makes ordinary containment almost useless. A locked room may hold the sleeping body while the wolf form travels. Restraining the person may injure them without stopping the attack. Waking them may end the journey, trap the spirit, or do nothing, depending on the story. The safest response is observation without interference until the rule is clearer. Watch the body and the place where the animal appears at the same time. Use separate witnesses who can't coordinate details during the event. If both forms are seen simultaneously, the theory changes. If the body reacts when the wolf is injured, the connection becomes stronger inside the folklore. Thiess also reminds us that official categories aren't neutral. Authorities may force a local belief into demonology. Later popular culture may force it into horror. The original speaker may have understood the wolf as a worker with a dangerous job. The werewolf has never been one thing. The next famous beast may not have been a werewolf at all, though later memory keeps pulling it into the same cage. Thiess breaks the assumption that every werewolf story describes the same enemy. His testimony places werewolves in conflict with witches and demons, rather than alongside them. The animal form remains frightening, secretive, and difficult to verify. Its claimed purpose changes from predation to protection. That reversal matters because appearance is the fastest evidence available during an attack. A large animal approaches a field. A figure moves at the edge of a procession, or a wounded person is found near the route. Fear encourages an immediate category. The creature looks like the thing that attacked before, so the group treats it as the same threat. Folklore repeatedly warns that shape can conceal motive. Behavior offers a stronger test. Record what the animal approaches, what it avoids, and whether it drives another threat away. Note whether livestock are injured or gathered, whether people are pursued or warned, and whether the creature returns to the same boundary. One protective act doesn't prove a permanent alliance. It only changes the next decision from attack to observation, when observation remains possible. A claimed protector also needs limits. Ask what information it provides and whether that information can be checked. Watch whether its warnings consistently benefit one household, faction, or accused person. A human offender can borrow the language of protection as easily as the language of a curse. The claim should never cancel evidence of harm. Inside the supernatural version, attacking the wrong werewolf may remove the only being able to follow a threat into a hidden place. Outside that version, attacking a person because they describe themselves through unusual religious or folkloric language can create an ordinary crime. Distance, witnesses, and verification protect both possibilities. This does not turn thieves into proof that benevolent werewolves existed. It preserves what the record actually gives us. A man under questioning who refused the moral category his judges expected. That refusal demonstrates how strongly authorities can shape a monster before the evidence is heard. A court asks for a servant of the devil. The accused describes a worker for God. Later, horror keeps the wolf, and often loses the argument. For survival, keep the argument. The body, shape, and title do not settle intent. Watch what the figure does, preserve the local explanation, and avoid forcing every animal form into the role supplied by the most famous film. Between 1764 and 1767, people in the former French province of Gévaudan were killed by one or more large animals. Many victims were women and children. Reports describe severe attacks, public fear, organized hunts, and royal involvement. The creature became the Beast of Gévaudan. Witness descriptions varied. Some called it wolf-like, but unusually large, colored, or shaped. Hunters killed wolves in other canyons. Attacks continued after supposed victories. The final identity remains disputed. Proposals include one or more unusually bold wolves, wolf-dog hybrids, an escaped exotic animal, trained animals used by a human killer, exaggerated reporting, and combinations of several causes. None has closed the case for everyone. Later storytellers pulled the beast into werewolf history. The attacks happened in a culture already familiar with supernatural predators, and the human secret made the animal easier to turn into a monster story. The documented response stayed practical. Communities organized hunts and offered rewards, while soldiers and professional hunters joined the search. Survivors fought back with sticks, blades, and improvised weapons. Communities altered travel and watched vulnerable routes. One of the strongest survival lessons comes from the victims who weren't passive. Groups of children and young herders sometimes defended one another. Jean Chastel is traditionally credited with killing the final animal in 1767, though later silver bullet details aren't supported as a clean contemporary rule. The silver story grew because it provides the ending a monster deserves. Real predators don't require symbolic ammunition. They require a weapon that can reach vital tissue, a person capable of using it, and conditions that don't place the hunter within biting distance. Silver is softer and less practical than ordinary lead for many firearm uses. Its fame comes from narrative meaning more than superior ballistics. The beast exposes a recurring problem in monster survival. People wait for identity when behavior already gives enough information to act. You may not know whether the attacker is a wolf, dog hybrid, escaped animal, or a person using an animal. That uncertainty doesn't change the need to keep children from traveling alone through the attack zone, document carcasses and tracks, and guard routes where attacks repeat. Don't spend the entire emergency arguing over the species. Contain the attacks before arguing about the cause. The silver bullet became famous later, and its route into werewolf law is much less ancient than most people assume. The Beast of Gévaudan remained dangerous while people argued about what it was. That is the practical center of the case. Witness descriptions varied, hunts produced claimed victories, and attacks continued. A single identity promised closure, but the immediate problem was repeated violence along routes used by vulnerable people. A useful response begins with a map. Mark each attack by date, time, victim, injuries, weather, terrain, nearby settlements, and known animal activity. Record unsuccessful attacks and sightings that did not lead to injury. Separate first-hand descriptions from details repeated after public discussion. A pattern may reveal one animal, several animals, a human offender, or unrelated events joined by fear. Victim selection also matters. Children and solitary travelers may be easier targets for a predator without requiring human planning. Repeated attacks near one path can reflect cover, water, livestock, or routine movement. An offender with human knowledge may choose locations based on schedules and escape routes. The same map can support several explanations, so it should not be built to prove one of them. Public rewards and large hunts can increase reporting while reducing accuracy. More people enter the landscape, more animals are killed, and every unusual track competes for attention. A claimed kill creates pressure to declare the danger over. When attacks resume, the story may invent a second creature or reinterpret the first carcass, preserve identification evidence before announcing success. Modern wildlife and forensic methods can do more than the historical response, though uncertainty remains. Photographs, measurements, biological samples, veterinary findings, and documented wound patterns can narrow the possibilities. None should be replaced by a symbolic detail such as unusual color or a witness's belief that the eyes looked human. Inside a werewolf story, a human pattern may emerge beside the animal pattern. Someone knows where search parties will go, moves evidence, opens barriers, or benefits when one suspect is blamed. Keep those actions in a separate timeline. They may point toward control of an animal, exploitation of the panic, or a different crime occurring during the attacks. The label can wait. Routes can be guarded, children can travel with adults, animals can be secured, and sightings can be recorded before the species is settled. Identification improves the response, but lack of identification does not require passivity. The safest early actions are the ones that reduce access without deciding what kind of monster deserves the credit. Silver carries protective, religious, and symbolic value in European tradition. It's associated with purity, money, sacred objects, and weapons made special by their material or blessing. Folklore includes stories where specially prepared bullets kill witches, enchanted animals, or werewolves. The material isn't always silver. A bullet may need to be blessed, inherited, marked, cast under particular conditions, or made from a specific object. The point is that an ordinary weapon can't reach an extraordinary body. Silver became the standardized werewolf weakness through later literature, and especially 20th century screen storytelling. Once repeated, it began to look ancient and universal. The Wolfman, released in 1941, helped fix several modern expectations around the werewolf. The film links transformation with Wolf's Bane, inherited verse, a contagious bite, and silver. It didn't invent every ingredient, it packaged them into a rule set audiences could remember. Film needs a visible test and a decisive weapon. Silver gives both. The hero can load one bullet, the victim can carry a silver object, and the audience knows the final strike matters. Older folklore often makes the cure more personal. Call the werewolf by their human name. Older remedies might remove the skin, expose the human identity, use a religious rite, or wait for a fixed term to end. Other stories call for a particular wound, or the destruction of the object that allows the change. Those methods target identity rather than biology. That difference matters if the werewolf is someone you want to save. A silver weapon assumes the creature must die. A transformation object may allow a cure. A curse may have conditions that can be reversed. A person suffering delusion needs treatment, not an enchanted projectile. Before choosing a weapon, decide whether the goal is escape, containment, identification, cure, or destruction. People in horror often fail because they jump straight to killing without knowing what death will do. The human may return permanently if the wolf dies. The curse may pass to the killer. The animal body may vanish and leave no evidence. The death may expose an innocent person who had no control over the transformation. The safest objective is usually escape. A werewolf that can't reach you doesn't need to be understood immediately. Use a strong barrier, a vehicle, elevation, firelight where appropriate, and distance. Don't rely on an interior door designed for privacy. Large cannons can break weak barriers, jump, dig, and exploit openings. Silver is a final measure after the ordinary physics are handled. That brings us to another rule Hollywood made much cleaner, the cure. Many transformation stories give the werewolf an object. A belt, wolfskin, ointment, or piece of clothing allows the change. The object may be given by the devil, made through ritual, stolen, or inherited. Removing it can end the transformation or prevent the next one. That makes the object tactically important. It also makes it dangerous evidence. A fur, belt, jar of grease, or unusual garment doesn't prove that its owner became a wolf. Hunters, farmers, soldiers, performers, healers, and ordinary households all used animal materials and salves. During a trial, an investigator who expected a transformation tool could reinterpret common property as a confession waiting to happen. Inside the folklore, don't put the object on, don't test the salve on skin, or wrap the belt around yourself. Contain it, document where it was found, and keep it away from anyone who may be accused through possession alone. If the object genuinely controls transformation, separation is safer than destruction at first. Burning or cutting it may free the wearer, trap them in the animal form, or trigger a rule the witnesses don't know. A reversible action preserves options. Outside the story, unknown salves and old animal hides can carry toxic substances, pathogens, mold, or parasites. Gloves, ventilation, and professional examination matter more than folklore bravado. The transformation object gives the older werewolf a weakness modern versions often lose. The curse may not live in the blood. It may be something the person has to wear. Historical werewolf traditions don't agree on whether the condition is a disease. A person who chose transformation may not want a cure. A cursed person may need the curse removed. A spirit traveler may consider the wolf form part of their role. A person convicted as a witch faces a religious and legal problem rather than a medical one. A person with clinical lycanthropy needs psychiatric care. Some folk remedies expose the human identity. Calling the werewolf by a baptismal name may break the animal state. Throwing iron or steel over the body appears in some transformation traditions. Removing the enchanted skin can restore the person. Religious confession or absolution may end a curse in Christianized accounts. Other stories impose time. The person remains a wolf for a fixed number of years. Interrupting the condition can restart the term or make it worse. That kind of rule punishes rescue attempts made without knowledge. A cure also raises a safety problem. The human who returns may have killed people. Lack of control changes how we judge the act, but it doesn't restore the victims or guarantee the next transformation won't happen. A cured person may still carry trauma, injury, guilt, or a criminal investigation. Don't confuse a human face with immediate safety. Restrain only when it can be done without escalating harm. Remove access to weapons, get medical help for injuries, keep witnesses separate, and preserve evidence from the attack. If the person has missing time, don't fill the gap for them with leading questions. The best cure inside the folklore is prevention. Don't wear an unknown skin or belt, or use an ointment supplied by somebody promising transformation. Don't drink from tracks, or perform a ritual whose rules you don't understand. Treat animal bites promptly. Take threats seriously before the person reaches crisis. The modern tragic werewolf often hides the condition to protect loved ones. That instinct makes emotional sense and tactical sense only when the isolation is secure. Chaining yourself to weak furniture in a basement isn't a plan. The room needs structural barriers, no accessible windows, no tools a transformed body can use, and nobody assigned to check from inside. Monitoring should be remote. Emergency services should know there's a dangerous animal or violent crisis without being given a fantasy that causes them to ignore ordinary precautions. If the change is predictable, leave populated areas before the danger window. Don't drive once symptoms begin. Don't ask one loved person to supervise from arm's reach. A cure attempt shouldn't create the next victim. Historical stories rarely give the accused person that amount of control. The community acts after attacks begin, and the response can become as lethal as the creature. Werewolf trials belong to the history of witchcraft prosecution, criminal law, religious conflict, and public fear. An accusation can kill even when no wolf exists. The suspected person may be tortured until they confess. Family members may be implicated. Property, reputation, and burial rights can be lost. A court may turn rumor into a supernatural narrative that no ordinary evidence can disprove. From the accused person's perspective, surviving the werewolf panic requires different rules. Don't joke about transformation when attacks are happening. Don't tell children that you're the wolf to frighten them. Keep records of where you were, and travel with witnesses. Seek legal and religious support before an informal crowd becomes the authority. The burden is unfair because the target is being asked to manage everybody else's fear. Historical accusations weren't fair systems. For the community, the rule is stronger. Separate animal control from criminal accusation. A predator can be tracked without naming a neighbor. A missing child can be investigated without deciding the suspect changes shape. A confession taken under torture isn't reliable evidence. A person's appearance, disability, isolation, or mental illness isn't proof. The werewolf explanation can also hide a human offender. A killer may use teeth, blades, or animal scavenging to confuse wounds. A person can move through woods more easily than a large predator in some settings. Somebody familiar with local fear can stage tracks or spread a rumor. Watch for evidence that requires hands. Knots, open latches, moved objects, selected belongings, concealed bodies, and attempts to control witnesses point toward human action. A wolf doesn't need to create an alibi. A person does. The same case may involve both. An animal can attack a body after a human killing. Scavenging changes wounds. Poor scene control makes the sequence hard to reconstruct. That's why the first hours matter. Keep people away from the scene. Photograph tracks with scale. Record weather, preserve clothing, and note who entered before authorities arrived. Don't let a story decide which evidence gets ignored. Inside an actual werewolf world, skepticism doesn't make you defenseless. It keeps you from fighting the wrong creature. The final plan has to survive several possibilities at once. A livestock killing can resemble a werewolf story before anyone sees the attacker. Secure surviving animals, preserve tracks and wounds, and contact wildlife or veterinary authorities. Don't bait, corner, poison, or pursue an unknown predator through darkness. A wounded wolf, dog, big cat, or other animal can attack again without following any supernatural rule. Separate human evidence from animal evidence. A person returning scratched doesn't prove transformation. An animal track near a home doesn't prove the owner of that home became the animal. The practical plan should make both possibilities less dangerous. Use lights, barriers, alarms, guarded enclosures, and coordinated watches. Leave identification to evidence rather than a frightened crowd carrying silver. Surviving the immediate encounter is only the first part. Wounds need treatment, frightened witnesses need separation, animals need examination, and the location needs protection from curious people. The explanation should remain unfinished while those jobs are done. Begin with medical care. Control bleeding, contact emergency services, and report any bite or saliva exposure. Preserve torn clothing when it can be done without delaying treatment. Photograph injuries according to legal and medical guidance, rather than arranging them to resemble a claw or jaw pattern. A wound pattern should be interpreted by people trained to compare it with real mechanisms. Witness memory changes quickly after a frightening event. Ask each person to write or record what they noticed before discussing theories. Include where they stood, what they could see, when they lost sight of the animal, and which details came from somebody else. Confidence can rise while accuracy falls, especially after one dramatic account gives everyone a shared sequence. Secure the scene without turning it into an attraction. Keep tracks, blood, hair, damaged barriers, and discarded objects from being handled repeatedly. Record weather and any changes caused by responders. If a belt, hide, salve, or unusual garment is found, treat it as evidence and a possible hazard. Do not wear it, burn it, or pass it around as a test. Rumor control is part of safety. Do not publish a suspect's name because one witness recognized a face in an animal shape. Do not announce a transferred wound before investigators can compare it. A detail kept private can help identify false claims and prevent a frightened crowd from copying the same evidence onto an unpopular person. The community also needs a way to stand down. If no attack occurs during the predicted period, record the quiet result. If wildlife evidence identifies an ordinary animal, allow the supernatural explanation to lose authority. If a person is arrested for a human crime, keep that evidence separate from claims of transformation. An explanation that cannot shrink will eventually consume innocent events. Inside the folklore, the werewolf survives through concealment. Outside it, the accusation survives through repetition. Careful after-action work limits both. Treat the injured, preserve the scene, document uncertainty, and refuse to let the most frightening version become official before the evidence can support it. Suppose attacks have begun near your community. A large wolf-like animal has been seen. A person is missing during some incidents. People tell stories about a hidden skin. A victim has been bitten. The next full moon is approaching, though you don't know whether that matters. Start with the rules that help in every version. Move vulnerable people away from isolated routes. Keep children, injured people, and animals inside secure structures before dark. Travel in groups and carry reliable light and communication. Avoid dense cover where a large predator can close distance before you see it. Treat every bite as a medical emergency. Wash the wound immediately with soap and running water. Seek urgent professional care. Report the animal exposure. Don't wait for fever, aggression, hair growth, or a lunar change. The real disease risk is more immediate than the folklore. Record the scene before anyone explains it. Record time, weather, tracks, wounds, witness position, and direction of travel. Keep witnesses from building one shared memory. Don't post every detail publicly. A withheld detail helps distinguish a real witness from somebody repeating the story. Work out what kind of transformation the local story describes. If the creature uses a skin, belt, or ointment, control the object. If the form travels as a spirit, observe the sleeping body and the attack site simultaneously. If injuries transfer, record the animal wound privately and watch for a human match. If the condition follows a calendar, use the pattern to evacuate and monitor rather than to stage a confrontation. Leave the silver rule aside until the local tradition supports it. Use ordinary barriers and distance first. A strong door works whether the creature is enchanted or not. A vehicle can create separation. Fire may deter an animal, though it can also trap people or spread. A firearm requires training, a safe line of fire, and legal use. A special bullet is worthless when the shooter misses or hits somebody behind the target. Decide whether the person can be saved. A cursed victim may need containment until the change ends. A voluntary killer may be using the wolf as a weapon. A person in psychiatric crisis needs medical intervention. Don't use one response for all three. Keep watching the people around the hunt. Track who directs the hunt, who identifies suspects, and who gains from abandoned homes or dead rivals. Keep doors locked even when the story says the monster can cross them. Panic gives ordinary criminals room to act. Don't chase an injured predator into cover. An injured predator is most dangerous in close cover. Don't follow blood alone. Mark the trail and return with trained support. If the creature can become human, the person may be waiting with the weapon after the tracks stop. Preserve the possibility that the story is wrong. The animal may be a wolf or dog. The missing person may be innocent. The wound on the suspect may have another cause. The full moon may be coincidence. Every time the evidence changes, reopen the explanation. If the folklore is accurate, the strongest advantage is knowledge of the exact local rule. Ask what people in that place actually believed before importing a film rule. A wolf skin in one region, a cursed term in another, and spirit travel in Livonia don't become one creature because a later movie uses the same name. The old werewolf is harder to survive because it doesn't give you a clean monster. It gives you an animal attack, a frightened community, a human suspect, and a rule that may have been invented after the blood was already found. Hollywood gave the werewolf a fairer rule set. That may sound strange when the modern creature can tear through a locked house, survive ordinary weapons, and spread its condition with one bite. The difference is that the audience receives a schedule and a weakness. The moon rises, the body changes, and silver provides a clear ending. Historical belief rarely offers that kind of mercy. Peter Stump's belt makes the wolf a chosen disguise. Gilles Garnier's case ties child murder to a solitary accused man. Jean Grenier turns self-described transformation into a question of crime and mental state. Thiess calls werewolves the hounds of God. The Beast of Gévaudan may not belong in the supernatural story at all. The label stays while the creature underneath it changes. The useful rule is to prepare for the behavior instead of the label. A wolf can be blocked, tracked, and reported. A human killer leaves human evidence. Someone under a curse may need containment, while a person in crisis needs care. A court or crowd can become dangerous before any transformation is proven. Silver only helps in the version where silver is the rule. The older werewolf doesn't promise you that version. That uncertainty also changes how the story should be told after the danger has passed. A dead wolf doesn't prove a neighbor transformed, and an injured suspect doesn't prove the animal carried the same wound. Keep animal evidence, human evidence, confession, rumor, and later folklore in separate columns. They may point toward the same event, or they may have been joined only because the werewolf gave everyone one explanation they could repeat. The person who survives the attack still has to survive the accusation, while the community has to resist turning uncertainty into permission for punishment. It waits for somebody to disappear, for tracks to cross the mud, and for one familiar person to come home with blood on their clothes. Then the village decides what it saw. This has been Dead Signal Index. Horror, folklore, and the rules that might keep you alive.